everybody.
Well, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for that introduction.
Tasafila, is that right?
You can just call me Tasa. That's fine.
Just Tasa? Okay. It's a made-up name?
It's a made-up name. Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't mean anything at all?
So yeah, it actually, before I was, all of this happened, I was an investor and a DAO contributor, and being anonymous was just a big part of, separating my life between the Web3 space and my career in my Web2 space. And then it stands for take a second and fall in love again. And my strategy as an investor and as a contributor was finding projects that made me feel nostalgic or made me feel, a sense of love for something maybe I've already enjoyed, or just makes me feel some sort of like nostalgia. Best way to do it. And so Blockbuster DAO really was the epitome of that. And here we are today.
But what does Tasafila mean?
Take a second and fall in love again. It's an acronym.
There you go. Take a second and fall in love again. Okay, that's why you have 15,000 followers on Twitter. I need to come up with something catchy like that. So, I mean, the whole thing with you and your anonymity, I mean, I'm sure right now there are people watching the stream and like, oh, I know this dude. Are you ready to get doxxed right now? Are you ready for people to know who you are?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, it's really like I work a 9 to 5 and I just don't want to complicate my career.
Okay, so nobody tell his boss.
Yeah, nobody tell my boss.
He's not a Web3 guy. He doesn't watch Twitter.
No. So for me, it's really not important, but I do respect people who want to stay anonymous. And I know there's a lot more reasons beyond, for me, just like from a financial perspective or somebody who maybe feels like they might be biased by the way they look or maybe some of the connections they have. And I think being anonymous can be a very productive trait for the right project.
Right.
And like the last presentation, talking about how like for me personally, I will dox myself before I haven't raised a dime for Blockbuster DAO. So I don't feel like I have to, but I would never in good conscience raise money while being anonymous.
Great. Doesn't that make perfect sense? Can we get a round of applause?
Oh, it's nice.
No, I mean, I'm serious. In our world, there is so much anonymity and people raising money anonymously.
Yep.
And then we find out afterwards that there's some sort of, shady dealings in the background, and that brings bad reputation to the entire industry. So, before asking for money, being clear about who it is that's doing that is very important. Now, how did the whole idea for the Blockbuster DAO come about?
Yeah, absolutely. My background kind of is like a perfect mesh where I spent a few years in the SaaS space. I worked in e-commerce for about 4 to 5 years. I was a startup founder of my own e-commerce company. And I'm also a filmmaker. And I, in college, was one of the first filmmakers to create an interactive theatrical film, which it means that you would go into the theater and you'd vote with your smartphone on decisions for the character. And for a while, that was really like my core concept of bringing into Web3 was this idea of collective interactive content where people could watch content together on a live stream and then vote on decisions, kind of like Goosebumps, right? And that project was called Super Infinity IO. And for a while, that was kind of just my anonymous project going into it. And the more I started seeing projects like Constitution DAO, there's kind of this, I don't want to say SPAC because I think there's a connotation there, but there's kind of this model where we can raise money to fund projects like Constitution DAO, like Assange DAO is now, and kind of fund ideas that we want. And for me, Blockbuster was a huge part of my life as a filmmaker, as a, just like a young person in general, growing up, going all the time. And it aligned very much with my ideas of the changes we need to make in the film space. And seeing as a screenwriter and a filmmaker, it's nearly impossible to get into the film industry. Like today, you might have a little bit of sum of money and you're like, I have this short film idea. I can't make a feature film, so I'm going to spend $70,000. I'm going to make this short film. I'm going to post it on Vimeo. And then you get, 70,000 views and then nothing happens. Like then you still have to market this short film and you basically just have a glorified business card. And so really a huge part of it is financing these projects, and then a huge part, what we're really focusing on is distribution. And for Blockbuster, the idea was creating a streaming platform that's decentralized that uses the DAO to moderate censorship, to help market creators effectively and equitably, and creating a platform where, like on Netflix, you go to the top 10, but the top 10 is all just Netflix originals. Like, that's biased, right? It's no, it's not. They're not fooling anybody. But
you mean the thumbs up, thumbs down doesn't do anything?
Doesn't do anything,
Oh.
right? And I think that was a huge part of it, is just making it more equitable for filmmakers. But on the other hand, I think, and I don't know, has anyone here watched the last Blockbuster documentary in here? Nobody. Wow. Okay. Anyway, a huge part of why that documentary was successful was because there was kind of this missing feeling of the way we or the way we create our products today. It's become so detached from intimate personal interactions, and people really miss that feeling of like going in and feeling like a case and hearing it click, and like there's just something in there. You ask somebody, you're like, do you have this movie in? Do you have any recommendations? Like, give me the most grotesque horror film you have, like, and they'll find it for you, right? Something like that.
So there's something to the tactile experience of speaking to someone at the store, which obviously a lot of us haven't been doing for the last 2 years.
Right, exactly.
Getting that DVD, or back when it was VHS, putting that VHS in, and seeing the warning that you're not allowed to that there's copyright and you're not allowed to infringe on that, and do not duplicate warnings. I mean, all of that's interesting. And you mentioned fundraising, and just a quick shout out, because some of the projects that he talked about, Juicebox is the fundraising platform that they use, and I believe Assange DAO is using right now. So sponsor of ours here, and we really appreciate their support. But in terms of Blockbuster, was that documentary that kind of triggered it in your head and said, you know what, this is a brand that's really gone to waste?
Absolutely. And I think, part of bringing back a brand, you could look at comparable decisions by, like, say, maybe Ty Lopez. He's a YouTube marketing guy. He has a SPAC where he buys all of these old businesses.
Buys the IP for them, basically?
The IP, yeah. And one of them being Radio Shack. And so the idea with that was they were going to take Radio Shack and just make it a crypto company, but they didn't really have any idea. There was no intrinsic value. They just said, we're going to take this Radio Shack and make it a token swap app. And everyone's kind of like, well, I don't need that. I don't need another token swap app. We have Uniswap. We have Pancake Swap. We don't need Radio Shack Swap. Also,
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of heartless, right? So part of when I started the Blockbuster DAO thesis was it needs to have an intrinsic value as well as extrinsic value. So it needs to make people money. Obviously, that's why a lot of us are in this industry. But there's something also more in Web3 about that intrinsic value. And for me, the DAO part is important for that, because I think community governance can play a factor in how we interact with our artists, whether it's via live stream, and that artist airdrops us exclusive content during the live stream of their video or of their movie, or it's community collective curation, and having channels where the community can say, here's our top 10 as the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Here's our top 10 movies right now on Blockbuster, right? And the community go, oh my God, I'm going to watch all of those. And there's different ways that we can use content to within our communities to kind of create this bigger intrinsic value as well as extrinsic value.
That's great. So you've actually put some time into this clearly and thought this through. And I know we have a huge community on Discord, right? That's very active on a daily basis. And so what kinds of sort of models has the community come up with, or have you come up with, for using NFTs, and how can we reward contributors? And is it we obviously there are a lot of people involved in making a movie, right? When we see the closing credits, you see all the gaffers, all the line techs, all of everyone, the location scouts, right? That's the most important job, actually. And so ultimately, you have this scenario where there are all these people, but they're behind the scenes, and people only know the actors and maybe the director or the producer, right? So how do you make it equitable for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's three parts, really, the way I see it, to the film model where there needs to be blockchain or Web3 components. The first part is financing, and you can raise that through, there's a lot of different projects out there. You could look at Julie Pacino, who did, she has a film coming out called Keepers of the Inn, and she raised money by, with generative photos from a rehearsal of the movie, and she used all the generative photos to fundraise, and now she's making her final feature film project. There are others who are even using private equity to fund their films, and that's okay. But NFT PFPs, there's a company called, or a group called Film DAO that's using that. And there's a lot, there's even, there's a new contract by a company called Bima, and they made an R NFT, which allows for revenue sharing later on, which really is an innovative product because if I sell an NFT collection or collectibles at the onset, I can make sure that those holders can get paid from the revenue sharing at distribution, and making sure that those initial investors are paid accordingly through the blockchain. So the first part is really fundraising. And then the second part is what you alluded to, is people who work on the film and creating equity contracts throughout. So like the screenwriter can, I mean, in a perfect world, the screenwriter can mint their screenplay, and that screenplay can be tracked on the blockchain through the whole cycle, so that throughout the film production, every person signed on to a DAO entity for a film, or anybody who creates some part of content within that film can get paid and have those kind of NFTs associated, so that they can get revenue at distribution. And then comes distribution, which is really what we're focusing on, because I think there are a lot of different ideas on how to fundraise and how to structure equity throughout the film crew and actors and investors. And I can't wait to see all the ways that people come up with. But at distribution, it's a pretty simple process where you either have your own subscription service, whether that's TV on demand or monthly. You could create token gating for your communities. So if you hold a certain NFT, you have exclusive access to content. There's a lot of ways that in Web2 are already being used, but we want to be able to give those tools to all Web3 creators. And the way we think about it is in Web3, streaming doesn't look like Netflix at all. It looks like Shopify, and it's being able to create tools for creators to be able to have their own marketplaces for their collectibles, for their content, and have them all wrapped up into one experience, so that their communities can participate to the fullest extent, and they can be equitably compensated. Whereas today, at distribution, Netflix basically takes everything. They own the IP indefinitely, and people like Squid Games. I don't know. I'll give a couple examples.
Please.
So like Squid Games, for example, insanely popular show. Has anyone seen Squid Games?
Of course. Who hasn't seen Squid Games?
So Squid Games, the creator has said publicly that he's made almost nothing from the show itself after selling it to Netflix. And this is a man who's lost teeth on production. He's literally bled for the film, and he's made nothing because the contracts are so intense and the competition is so intense to get into these distribution channels that it's impossible for creators to actually benefit from their content. And it's kind of disgusting, honestly, the way that creators are treated. Another example is Scarlett Johansson with Black Widow. In the new streaming world, film is still getting used to it. And when COVID happened, Black Widow came out and they said, okay, we're actually not going to even go to box office, and we're just going to go straight to Disney Plus. That way, we can also void Scarlett Johansson's contract for revenue sharing at box office. So essentially eliminated a huge part of why she signed on to the film, and she sued them, and they went to battle over it, and she ended up winning. And after a large sum of money later, ended up getting paid only probably about 50% of what she was actually owed in court. So there are a lot of creators out there who are really at the whim of these larger streaming platforms, and it's really important that we are able to give them the tools that they can monetize and distribute autonomously. And I think that's really what we're doing at Blockbuster.
That's awesome. So right now the model is you create something, you sign a contract, it initially has no value, then people who invest in it invest in the network effect, it gains value, but then the original creators get none of that benefit, right? And so what we're saying now is the blockchain allows us to create something. It may not have value initially,
Right.
but as we gain value, and maybe it's something that you give away for free. We can make a movie, we can give it to 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people for free.
Yep.
But if they love that movie, they're going to recommend it to their friends. And as that movie grows in popularity, and so will the NFTs that are associated with the photos that were taken on the film set and the various other assets that were built around that time. So this whole model of creating assets before they have value or without the intent necessarily of them gaining huge value, but maintaining that equity is really important. But tell me.
Sorry, I just want to add in, there's a really good point in there about in the film industry, there's a lot of what we call creative waste. So you create a film and you have bloopers, you have still photos, you have behind the scenes, you have drafts of screenplays, you have notes on bar napkins. Like you have so much like story there in tangible things and digital things that go to waste. They sit in an archive or they go to a museum, and some of those things are still applicable. But for a smaller creator, you can actually now use those to sell as collectibles. A blooper reel could sell for a lot more money than a regular NFT. And I think otherwise they really serve no purpose other than to just kind of help you leave the movie feeling a little bit better about the movie or feeling a little bit more attached to the cast and crew. And I think in an even better way, now you could own that blooper reel. And I think that creative waste and being able to monetize on it and utilize it is really important for creators and gives them even more power over new revenue. And it's a new revenue that we're calling CVOD. It's not something that which is collectible video on demand. It's not something that I think is for all types of content, but now you could publish your content for free and monetize solely on collectibles and be able to give everyone equitable access to your content around the world. And in and of itself is marketing itself and making the money on the collectibles.
Right. And there's some of that now, right? But it's a secondary market. Right. Like you have maybe props from a movie that are being sold, but the original creators get none of that. They're completely locked out of that market. So this is something, some way to give them some equity in it as well. So tell me, I mean, from the perspective of community creating this as a Web3 entity, as a DAO, I mean, you don't have it all figured out, do you?
Oh no, not at all. And that's why I'm here, honestly, is because I'm not a DAO expert. I'm not I come from the space a bit, but I'm looking to all the experts in this room to figure out what the best way to do that is, and I have some favorites in mind where, I really like projects like Orca Protocol or, I could name a few, but I'm looking to the DAO experts in this room to kind of help guide me and my team in the best direction. And we obviously have some ideas and we have some nuances with our organization that I think differ from a lot of other organizations. But yeah.
Well, I really like that methodical approach. I think a lot of people rush to, create an NFT or to create some kind of, piece of art, but they don't necessarily understand how the system works.
I always tell everyone on our team to not rush greatness. And I think there's a tendency for people, especially in this space, to say, oh, we have to go now. Or, oh, no, there's churn in our Discord. We were at 8,000. Now we're at 790 or 7,900. And it's like, oh, my God, we need to market more or we need to do more. And at the end of the day, no, we don't. We don't need to. Churn is fine. And coming from the e-commerce space, churn is acceptable at certain levels. So I think it's important to not feel like everything is happening now. And if you fall behind, you're falling behind indefinitely. I think it's better to be methodical and make sure that you're not rushing into a DAO and saying, oh, well, we just need to get to market. Let's just incorporate in New Hampshire and figure it out. That's probably not the best method to do it. So
Yeah.
we
Well,
definitely try to.
Our
pace
dozen
ourselves.
lawyers tomorrow can definitely
Yes.
help you with that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and my DAO, the Meritus Islands new option that came out today. So from the perspective of community, what does your community look like? I mean, you've got a Discord. What are these people doing, if anything?
Yeah, I think that was definitely our first struggles because we had such fast growth. When I first tweeted, we had 2 followers. I had 2 followers. By the next morning, the day after Christmas, we had about 5,000, and now we have about 15,000 on Twitter, and now 8,000 in Discord. And I had no idea that all that was going to happen. I just wanted to publish this idea, feel it out, maybe get some sentiment. And obviously it was very validated, but part of that was enabling people to feel, to start contributing right away. And it was hard, especially with no treasury and wanting to make sure that we weren't monetizing, especially I didn't feel comfortable monetizing since I wasn't doxxed, and still not technically. But
technically,
yeah, if you do your research, I'm sure you can figure it out.
Who's got a face scanner?
Right. So I think for us, it was dividing people up into working groups and really creating zoning essentially for different backgrounds, right? Because we have film experts, tons of like film industry experts who have no idea what Web3 is, but they want to help and they know there's something wrong. So being able to enable them to do what they do and be able to contribute, but also having the Web3 DAO experts come in, having people from all different walks of life and different content types, even from the YouTube space, coming in and saying, how can we help influencers create channels? How can we help people who work specifically in short film or spoken word? And there's a lot of different content types that have different problems. So it's been a real challenge, but we're finally at a point where we've really divvied up into these working groups and make sure that all of our conversations, for the most part, are happening publicly. And then using products that are Web2 based, like Notion, are really helpful for creating a wiki where people can see information. We have so much conversation happening that I've literally brought on 3 or 4 people just to recap conversations in Discord and then publish it on Notion. And it's worked great because I'll have people on Twitter be like, oh, I just found your project. Where can I get updated? And I'm like, oh, go to the rewind on our wiki on Notion. And they go and they read and they're like, oh, okay, gotcha. I'm already onboarded. And it's been a great tool. It's probably not the most efficient tool, but especially because there's a lot of manual labor involved in that. But it's been very helpful to have recaps of our Discord published somewhere so that people could stay updated, or possible investors, people who have not a lot of time to be on Discord or in our social channels, and they can go and they can stay updated.
Is this something that you're keeping track of as people are contributing their time to do the recaps? I mean, this is going to be much more valuable as time goes on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So every week, I think we do it every Wednesday we publish, and we make sure it's like on a regimented schedule.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is, I mean, a legit thing, though. I hear that you've recently actually started talking to Dish Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't talk too much about it just because of just my respect for the relationship that we have so far. But things are going really well for us. And right now, I think a lot of people get confused on what our true motive is. And I think for a lot of people go, oh, well, we're just trying to buy Blockbuster. And we're basically, that's it. Like all this other stuff is just kind of extraneous filler, but we really just want to buy and own Blockbuster as just like just an entity. And I think that's just the total wrong thinking about it. And it's kind of toxic. And I try to direct people that, okay, so we buy Blockbuster. Where's the value, right? The value is just in the brand. If we create a platform and we're ready to launch, where we've created partnerships, as soon as we do an IDO, we could launch within 15 to 30 days, right? And then if we go and buy Blockbuster or partner with Dish to license the brand, then we can launch within 15 to 30 days with these partners that already exist. They're already solving these problems and have been for the last 2 to 3 years. And we can provide value for the DAO beyond just a brand. And we can have a product. We have creators lined up that are ready to start contributing and start using the platform, and are dying for us to start. We just need to be able to like kind of combine all of the elements.
Cool. So, I mean, it sounds like you're really just mobilizing all of these different parts. I mean, Blockbuster, clearly well-known brand. that should, do its job in terms of the promotional aspect, making people aware of, oh, Blockbuster's back. I mean, that should get some good PR, which you've had no problem with because you've been on national television, not in person, but, have you done any of those like
shadowy
things? Yeah.
No, not yet.
No.
I've been waiting, but I to be honest, I'm at this point. I came here in person because I want to show to my community that's watching probably right now or will watch whenever they see this video, is that it's really not important for me to stay doxxed, and it's not a huge part of my ethos, but it has been beneficial at the onset to make sure that I'm just protecting myself as kind of this like extreme growth happened. But now that we're at a point where everything's lined up, we're ready to start fundraising, I'm getting ready to be at a point where I feel comfortable with it. And, I've had a lot of support from people around me, and I've appreciated that.
But it also shows that that it's cool, that it's okay to be anon if you want to be. We know a lot of people who don't like to be public for whatever reason. Either they're private people or some are trans or gay and they don't want to come out in public.
1,000,000%.
With that, right? So there's a lot of reasons why they may want to be, but those people probably shouldn't be running like the governance, tokenomics, and financing, right?
Yeah, and obviously in a true DAO, it's okay to be anonymous because a true decentralized entity should be able to have back checks and be able to, kind of corral any kind of suspicious activity, whether it's a doxed person or an undoxed person. So I really do think that anybody out there who maybe feels conflicted or lesser than because they don't feel comfortable being doxed, I think I would just tell you that it's okay, and that I know that there's for me personally, I respect the decision, and
yeah, that's cool.
That's why DAOs are important.
So do you want to tell us your name?
Not right now. We'll get there.
First name?
Yeah. No, not right
Initials?
now. No.
Tasafila, guys, thank you very much.